On episode 364 of the Tennis Files podcast, you'll learn advanced doubles strategies with Will Boucek. Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the Tennis Files podcast. Really appreciate you tuning in. Today we have Will Boucek on the podcast. He actually appeared on episode 278 where we talked about double strategy for club level players. So go to tennisfiles.com/278 to check that one out or search it in your podcast app. But today we have brought Will back. He's been a great guest of the show as well as my summits. And so today we talked more in depth about double strategy. Of course, Will is a really great resource for that. He is an ATP and WTA double strategy analyst. He's the founder of Tennis Tribe and host of the Doubles Only Tennis podcast. Will works with a wide variety of tennis players from club level, D1 to top 10 doubles players on the ATP and WTA tours to help them better understand their game and strategize against opponents. I really love the t-shirts that he's made as well that a lot of tennis professionals have been wearing. It says watch more doubles on it. So really cool. And he's got well over 20 years of experience playing and coaching tennis, is a former college player, and is currently an NTRP 5.0 as well. So it's really fun, as you'll hear, when I talk to Will. There have been several times where I'm going to a USTA match and I listen to his podcast because I know that one is specifically on double strategy. So it's really helpful. Definitely something you should check out, which we have the link to on the show notes page there. We'll also have a link to Will's doubles return cheat sheet, which is excellent. So definitely check that one out as well. And yeah, we talk about a lot of strategies here, a little bit more advanced than our previous discussion. So I definitely encourage you to check that one out. Again, 278 is the episode number. And then this one is 364, of course. And some things we touch upon are what cues do you look for when deciding to poach in a rally, some mixed double strategies, how to neutralize big servers, and, common mistakes that players are making, on the returns and, shot selection. And yeah, a lot of different scenarios that we encounter a lot. So I think I really enjoy it, return strategy as well. So yeah, it'll be a really helpful one for, I think, the vast majority of you all, because even, myself, I love playing singles, but due to USTA being vast majority doubles, I'm playing, 90% plus doubles. So definitely a fun one and a very informative one. Hope you really enjoy this episode. So without further ado, here is my interview with Will Boucek. Everybody, we're here with my friend Will Boucek. He is the Tennis Tribe founder and the host of the Doubles Only podcast. It's a fantastic podcast that you all should check out. Will was also on a recent live stream with my good friend Peter Freeman. Always like to shout out Peter. But Will, thanks so much for coming on to the show. It's really a pleasure to be speaking with you once again.
Yeah, thanks for having me on again. It's been a little while. I was able to present at Tennis Summit earlier this year, which was a lot of fun. And appreciate everything you're doing with the podcast and the Tennis Summit. It's always a really cool event and just amazing kind of platform you've built here. So I appreciate being a small part of it.
Oh, thanks, Will, for the very kind words. And yeah, I just really love what you're doing and how much you're connecting with, all the top doubles pros, and just seeing you with all of them is really cool. And the doubles, watch more doubles shirts, and some really fantastic interviews, like I said, on your podcast. And I think I saw it was very interesting. I heard Marcelo Arevalo talking about like French Open and how like his body just held on, and then as soon as he won the French Open, then he got super sick, and it was just really interesting. So I really enjoy your podcast, and it's definitely my go-to, because I like most club level players, we play 90% plus doubles. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much what USA Leagues is all about. So your podcast is really helpful. So I guess my first question is a bit more general, but what do you think the most important thing to think about is when trying to formulate double strategy with your partner?
Yeah, this is a question I get a lot, and there's not really kind of a clean answer to this because doubles is so complicated and complex. And that's one of the things I really love about it. There's just so many moving pieces. It's a lot more complicated than singles, for example. And all these different moving pieces can adjust your strategy. But one of the best places to start if you're game planning with your partner is I like to have my teams come together and communicate with each other and develop their own kind of identity, if you will, for their team. And then you can make adjustments on a match to match basis. So that always starts with serve strategy. Serve strategy is number one because the serve is the only shot that you can totally control. The opponents have virtually no influence on it. Of course, they can adjust their return position, which might make you adjust your serve strategy a little bit. But for the most part, you control that. So you want to have a real clear identity with your serve strategy on what your strengths are going to be, if you're going to use different formations to hide weaknesses on your team, different formations to expose strengths on your team, how aggressive you're going to be at the net, whether you're going to serve and volley, all of these different things. And the way to figure that out is to talk to your partner before the match. This is totally off the court, and ask them, are you more comfortable at the net or at the baseline? Are you more comfortable hitting forehands or backhands at the net or the baseline? And then with all that information, you can start to use some of these serve formations and choose different serve locations depending on your skill level to develop your serve strategy. And then from there, you can talk about choosing return sides, how y'all are going to handle returning against first serve versus second serve. A lot of teams might play two back against first serve and they might be more aggressive. You might even return and volley against a second serve. So those are the areas that I would start with. And then Jorge Capistani, who I know you've had on several times, has a really good PDF that has 20 questions. I don't know if you've seen this before, but it's got 20 questions that you can go through with your doubles partner. And I always recommend that to people as well. He's got tons of great singles and doubles content, but this sheet has questions that will really build your team chemistry and help you game plan with your partner.
Yeah, that's great stuff, Jorge. Another great coach. Really fantastic. So you mentioned a lot of great things here. I took notes on them on my Google Doc sheet here.
Yeah.
But in terms of the, having a clear identity with respect to serving, is there an ideal serve for doubles? I know there's obviously, you have opponents who have strengths and weaknesses, things like that. But is there one general serve? Like, for example, do you think body serve is like a really good serve to have when doubles, or do you think the slice out wide is really good? Like, what are maybe like your favorite serve or serves to utilize in doubles in a general sort of vacuum?
Yeah, you're kind of getting towards some common, I guess, phrases and tips that a lot of coaches and players live by and say. One of them is it's better to serve down the tee in doubles because it takes away the returner's angles and it gets your partner at the net more involved. In theory, this makes perfect sense because through the middle of the court does take away the returner's angles. Your net player can be a little bit more aggressive towards the middle because it's more difficult to hit down the alley if you serve the opponent down the tee. I've looked at the data on this and it's just not true. At most levels that I've studied, or at every level that I've studied, teams have a slightly, very, very slightly higher win percentage serving out wide in both the deuce and the ad court. Now, most teams serve more often down the tee. So this could be a product of serving out wide, the returner's not expecting it, so it becomes more effective. But I don't think it's as simple as there is one serve location that is the best serve location for doubles. I think it's very matchup dependent and very opponent dependent based on their strengths and weaknesses, what they're comfortable with. And then you also have to keep in mind the formations, right? If I'm playing a regular formation, I might want to serve wide and have my net player pinch a little bit if we're ahead in the game. But if we're down 15-40 and I hit that wide serve in the deuce court and have my net player pinch towards the middle, even if that down the line forehand from the deuce court is a 30% shot, if they land that 30% shot, the game's over and we just got broken. So that might not be the best time to do that. So you have to keep in mind so many different factors when it comes to serve strategy, and there's not a best serve spot or best serve play. You can have a best one for your team and a best one against a specific opponent, and you have to kind of weigh each of those different variables.
Yeah, it's very insightful, Will. And you mentioned too, one thing that I think about a lot in doubles is, the formations to highlight your strengths, use them as much as possible and also mask weaknesses. So, with me, I love to hit heavy forehands pretty much. So, what I really like is, on the ad side, using the Aussie formation or just calling a poach on there. So, what are some other examples of, using the formations, to play to your strengths versus, and masking the weaknesses?
Yeah. Yeah. So that the Aussie or I formation on the ad side is one that I have most teams go to out of the gates. You're exposing your own forehand as the server. You're also hiding the net player's backhand volley up at the net. So this is assuming both players are right-handed. So that's a really good one. You can also use it on the deuce side, though. And I would encourage you to try this, Mirban, because even though you're exposing your backhand as the server, assuming your net player stays to the right, most deuce court returners almost never see I or Australian formation. So what you're going to find is they're going to make a lot more return errors trying to return down the line. And for every one backhand ground stroke you have to hit, which I'm like you, I'm uncomfortable hitting a backhand ground stroke from the ad court. I just want to avoid it at all costs. For every one of those I have to hit, I'm able to force maybe 2 return errors and get my net player a volley. So I would encourage teams to try it on both sides. And you want to really think about this from the returner's perspective. So if you're playing regular formation during the match, you're serving and staying back, the opponent is hitting returns really deep in the court, cross court, try to force them down the line, because if they hit that same return that they just hit deep in the court, cross court, if you can take if you were in, I think you learned this in like 4th or 5th grade, the protractor, where it's like cross court like this. And if you take it all the way down the line, that same return is going to land long. So that's something else to think about. Now, if those returns are landing short, then it should make it a little bit easier for you if you are serving and staying back. So you have to kind of weigh what the opponents are doing against your own strengths and weaknesses. And just because you're hitting that backhand ground stroke from the ad court, you have to ask yourself, is it less comfortable for them to return down the line or me to hit a backhand ground stroke? And what's happening more often? And a lot of times in the deuce court, it's less comfortable for them to hit that return down the line. So you prioritize that over your serve +1 shot.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I'm definitely going to try that. And I do feel like, maybe it's not the most comfortable, but I could probably, serving at the tee, but the center hash, I can probably run around and get to my forehand still. So
Maybe
there's that too, I guess.
So this is
Maybe.
an interesting one. So let's go back to the whiteboard here. I'm gonna this will be published on YouTube, I guess.
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay. So let me go back to the whiteboard here, and I'll show you some of the angles we're looking at. All right. Can you see that okay?
Looks good.
I'll close the blinds here. Here, that's better. So this is something that a lot of coaches and players tell me is exactly what you just said. So like, let's say we're running I formation. We're the serve team here at the bottom. We're running I formation in the deuce court. If you serve it down the tee here, this player's shifting over here to hit their return. If they hit that return down the line and your net player goes right, this ball is moving away from you, right, as the server. So it's moving this direction. So this is going to be actually a pretty difficult ball to run around. But if you hit this wide serve, and they go out here to hit a forehand, they have to bring it back into the court. So that's
Mm-hmm.
actually the one that's easier to run around because you can back up
Mm,
here and buy yourself time, and this ball is going to your right. So it's going to be a little bit
right.
easier to run around that one, serving wide. So when I'm running I formation in the deuce court, if I'm calling for my net player to shift to the right, a lot of times I'm either calling a body serve, which um, will make it a very high percentage serve. And a lot of times players can't get a ton of pace on a body serve. So that'll give me more time to run around it. Or I'm calling that wide serve so that they have to pull it back towards the middle of the court. And that'll give me time to run around it there. Does that kind of make sense?
Makes total sense. Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's all
that's
about
kind of a
the.
common, like, I guess, misconception that a lot of people have, is that that T serve is best out of the I formation, but that's not always the case.
Yeah, I'm gonna get that back into your backhand. Yeah, great stuff there. Um, so what maybe mistakes do players make when they're first trying the I formation? One that I'll just say myself, and I don't know if this is a mistake or not, but it's funny. With I formation, like I would just stay in the very middle, like on the line,
Hmm.
service line. And then one of my friends, Byron, said, "Hey, I noticed that, the pros when they do I formation, they're actually planting themselves, not in the center, but to one direction of that line by like a couple of feet, I guess maybe.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's potentially a mistake. Maybe that's to cut off the angle, the down the line angle, or make it look like it's smaller. But
Mhm.
let me know if that's a mistake, and also just any other I formation mistakes.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll go back to the whiteboard here to show you. So what you're talking about is typically, it sounds like you line up like this at the
Yeah.
net, where you're right in the middle
Right.
on this center service line. What you'll see with a
Yeah.
lot of the pros is they'll line up a little bit closer to regular formation. Um,
Yeah.
I think I'm fine with either. If you're lining up like this and you notice the opponent is able to consistently hit this one down the line, then I
Hmm.
would shift a little bit more to the left and just give them, throughout the match, give them more and more of this cross court shot, and until they hit it. And then you've kind of probably found your sweet spot on where you're
Hmm.
creating the smallest window possible on either side. What you're going to find with I formation is almost everybody likes to return down the line. So you can be a little bit more
Yeah.
aggressive here. Um, One of the other really common mistakes I see, especially at the lower levels, at 3-0, even 3-5 and 4-0 sometimes, is a team will call I formation and they'll say, okay, I'm the net player, I'm going to move to my right. And what they do is they line up here. And when they move to the right, they think they have to get to the center of the other service box, and they allow a lot of returns through the middle.
Hmm.
Really, when you're lining up, you want to stay around that center service line, because if they're hitting a cross court return, it's got to cross this center net strap area. So this is
Right.
the area you want to cover. So that's one mistake. Another one is just lining up too far back as the net player.
Right.
So the server's partner is too far back, and it doesn't allow them to get involved in the point. With that, you're giving up an easier cross court return. And if they do come at you, this ball is going to drop, and you're going to have a much more difficult volley. So you want to line up pretty close to the net. You'll see a lot of pro players line up where they can reach out and grab the net with their hand. They're that close to the net. I like to take a few steps back, and then when I pop up out of the I formation, I'll take a few steps forward so that I have a little bit of forward momentum when I'm hitting that first volley, and that makes it easier for me. I'm okay with either one as long as you are kind of forward a little bit and on your toes.
Yeah, that's really good. So yeah, I guess in that particular diagram that you showed, if you call I right, you're really not moving that much at all to the right. But if you call I left, then you do have to move significantly more to cover the down line.
Yeah, for sure. And this will,
Yeah.
if you're going to call I left in the deuce court, we're talking about the deuce court for people listening who can't see. So you call I formation and shift to your left. With that call, you want your net player covering this down the line return. And again, we want to think about the angles of the court here. So if you hit them that wide serve that I was talking about earlier, and you call I left, they have to get way over here and almost get over to the doubles alley. I mean, this return is probably going to cross the net in the doubles alley. But if you can call that T serve, if they're even going for the doubles alley, it's going to cross here in the singles court.
Mm.
Probably 3-4 feet to the right of the singles line is where it's going to cross the net. So if you're calling for your net player to move to the left, a lot of times a T serve or maybe a body backhand serve is best. And that way they don't have to get all the way to the doubles alley. Instead, they just need to move to the center of the service box and they'll be able to cover that shot.
That's really good. So you really do want to think about those angles and where's the return likely to end up.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of the I formation, sometimes I'm not sure what to what to pick, what direction to pick. So what type of factors are you thinking about? Because I guess, one factor, again, as we talked about in the beginning of the interview, was like picking based on where do you want, what shot do you want the server to hit? So for me, I'd go in the direction, like if I'm serving, like where I can hit a forehand. But like what types of factors do you generally consider for picking which side the net player should go and
Mm-hmm.
which, and with the server, where they should go?
So I always start assuming that the returner likes to return across their body. So what I mean by
Hmm.
that, from the deuce court, let's say everybody's right-handed. This player likes to hit their forehand return across their body, which is cross court, and they prefer to hit their backhand return across their body, which is down the line. So as the server or as the serve team, we can call plays based on that. So if we're going to call a backhand or a T serve or a body backhand serve, I'm going to have the net player shift left because I know this one's likely to come down the line, which is across their body. If I'm going to serve wide, I'm going to have my net player stay in the middle because this forehand return is more likely to come cross court. So that's where I always start. Now, there's exceptions to all of this. I've played players who return from the ad court, and for whatever weird reason, they like their backhand down the line and they're returning in the ad court. It's not common. It's usually a very low percentage shot for a club level player, but I've played a handful over the years who like that shot. So you have to adjust accordingly. In that case, I'm going to have the net player go right if we're calling that wide serve, or stay if we're playing regular formation, or maybe fake to make them think it's open and then come back and cover that. So you want to notice which direction each returner likes to hit their return, whether it's across their body or kind of inside out / down the line. And then the other thing you want to keep in mind is the quality of each of the returns. How often are they making errors on the returns? How fast are they hitting the returns? That's going to dictate how easy the volley is. How high is it over the net? How much spin are they able to put on it? So usually a forehand return is going to have more spin and more dip, making for a more difficult volley for your net player. Whereas a backhand return is going to be a little bit flatter, which means it's going to be a little bit easier volley for your net player. So you want to keep all of these factors in mind, and then you can from there determine which way your net player is moving, whether it's out of eye or regular formation.
Gotcha. Thanks, Will. So for many people listening who don't move at all,
Yeah.
and I know you'd mentioned earlier, you said, you have a lot of players like try, Aussie and I, but if you have players who have, they stand in their formation and that's it, and they don't move at all, like what one or two, like what are the first one or two formations that you would have them try out after listening to this?
Sure. So start with regular formation and just try poaching some. Try it from the deuce court if you're right-handed. That way your forehand volleys in the middle, and do it on a first serve. When your partner hits a first serve, I want your eyes to be directly on the returner. This is something that we have to kind of consciously train ourselves to do. So a lot of people, their partner will serve, and as soon as that ball crosses the net, their eyes are on the ball. I don't want your eyes on the ball. I want your eyes on the returner, because ultimately the ball has to come from that returner's racket. So you'll get more information by studying them as the ball approaches them than you will by staring at the ball the whole time. So eyes on the returner, and then time your poach according to their backswing. So as they start their backswing and then they start to swing forward, you're going to move across and diagonally. So you want to be moving have a little bit of forward momentum kind of towards that center net strap. And you'll typically need to move earlier than you think you do. If you get beat down the line,
Mm.
just live with it. Maybe do it in some practice matches if you're really nervous about it. That way the stakes are low, and just get comfortable moving at the net. That's a great way to do that. Another tactic you can use if you want to try I formation. Um, I like what you said earlier, is trying I or Australian in the ad court. And the net player can still poach from here. So call this play several times where the net player stays to the left and then the server shifts to the right. And then they get in a down the line rally with their forehand. And then after you've called that several times, call a just regular body serve if you can control your serve location. If not, don't worry about it, but call a poach from this net player and have them go to the right. And that will, again, be a forehand volley. It'll make for an easy volley you can take through the middle of the court, which is always easier than trying to hit an inside out volley. And those are, I think, two of the better places to start if you're uncomfortable moving at the net. And I really encourage people to try this in practice matches again, because those are the times that the stakes are low and that we can really push ourselves and expand our comfort zone, and really learn new skills.
Yeah, 100%. So, I think of the Bryan brothers where you have a lefty and a righty, and it was interesting how, they chose to have their forehands on the inside for most of their career anyway.
Mhm.
So when you do have this lefty righty combo, I mean, what's your take on it? I mean, should it be different from what the Bryan Bros selected? Are there certain factors again that we have to think about? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think for most teams, forehands in the middle is best. So if you watch the pros,
Mm,
almost all of them have the lefty in the deuce court. The only exception is Nicole Melicar Martinez and Ellen Perez. It's the only exception that I'm aware of, and I study the pros a lot. Yeah, like 90% of them or something have the lefty in the deuce court, and the reason for that is in doubles. I'm sure a lot of your listeners have heard this from you or from some of your guests. You want to control the middle of the court, and with forehands in the middle, you're able to have your strengths in the middle, which is typically a forehand, and you're able to control the middle a little bit better. And most players are more comfortable hitting a backhand cross court than they are kind of inside out, if that makes sense. So
that's
I would
true.
start typically with forehands in the middle. If you just absolutely can't return that way, I think it's okay to go the other direction. Or if you like your backhand better than your forehand, then you can try with backhands in the middle. But typically, when I'm playing a lefty righty combo and I see them lined up with backhands in the middle, I'm pretty excited, because that means I don't really have to think about where I'm hitting most of my shots. I'm just going to go high percentage through the middle of the court and try to get to the net. And to hit a backhand passing shot, which, like I said earlier, has a little bit less pace than a forehand, a little bit less spin than a forehand. To hit that from the middle of the court with me and my partner at the net, it's just a really, really difficult position to be in.
Yeah, totally will. So, Um, in terms of maybe a bit lower level, like let's say 3.0 to 3.5, most of the time, I did get a question a couple of days ago with Peter about lobbers and how to deal with, players that just lob all the time. Actually,
Mhm.
I was out in where was I? In San Diego a few months ago, and I saw, I believe it was a 3.5. It was a tri-level court, the 3.5 men's, where they had, like, no joke, it was like a 50 ball lob rally where the two net players were just looking up,
Yeah.
and not doing anything, and that's all it was. So I was just wondering, with that's an extreme scenario, but in general, like, what are your strategies to deal with lobbers at that 3.0, 3.5 ish level?
Yeah. One thing is to practice your overheads more. Um,
Hmm.
I asked this question to Rob Morgan, who was coaching Wesley Koolhoff last year. Wesley won Wimbledon with Neil Skupski in 2023, and that was the first thing he said. He said, "Practice your smashes." He's from the UK, so they call them smashes. But yeah, I think that's a huge thing. When I was talking with Peter yesterday, he said, when he's doing clinics, one of the things that people are worst at, or one of the drills that they struggle with most at that 3.035 level is the overhead drills. So that's why the lob has become so effective at that level. And that's why it's so frustrating to play against, because our overheads aren't good enough at that level. So practice your overheads for sure. Beyond that, figure out which player is better at lobbing, and don't hit it to them when both players are at the baseline. And then B, which side do they prefer to lob on? So most lobbers prefer to lob off of one side or the other. It may be their forehand, it may be their backhand, but don't hit it to that side. See if you can lob to the other side of the court and try to get them on that weaker side. And notice where the lobs are landing on either side to figure that out. So there's a player I played against when I was a 4-5, and he lobbed everything. He had a big 115 square inch racket, and he made it up to 4-5. And I noticed his forehand lob always landed a little bit closer to the service line. His backhand lob always landed near the baseline. So I told my partner, we're going to hit all of our shots to his forehand, and then we're going to have overheads from the service line. We're going to play them high percentage through the middle, because these aren't put away balls. These are overheads, from the service line, which maybe for a pro it's a put away ball, but for me it's not. And then we're able to take control of the point from there. So figure that out. And then you can also try bringing them into the net. If they're back behind the baseline lobbing, they're probably comfortable back there, and they're probably not comfortable at the net. So what you'll find is you hit a short ball, they'll come forward, they'll chip it back to you, and then they'll start to rush backwards. As they rush backwards, if you can take that ball really early and hit it right at their feet, they're going to have trouble with that one. So that's another tactic you can use against the lobber. But ultimately, it just goes back to doubles principles, right? You have to find their strengths, their weaknesses, and attack their weaknesses and avoid their strengths as much as you can, and really be patient with teams like that. They win based on you beating yourself. So you cannot overpower a team like that typically. You're not going to spin them off the court. You're not going to out hit them. You've got to be really smart and really patient against those teams.
That's the name of the game for sure. In terms of during the rally, sometimes I find myself, thinking about crossing for a shot, and I don't, and I think immediately, damn, that was right there. I should have gone. So what cues do you look for during the rally when deciding to cross and pick a ball off?
So where are your eyes during the rally? That would be my first question.
Eyes during the rally. They're usually, I think I know the answer. Yeah, I think I'm actually just like looking at the person at the baseline hitting the ball.
Yeah.
But I think maybe they should be somewhere else.
No. So as the ball is, if your partner's in a cross court rally, when your partner's hitting, you want your eyes on the opposing net player, because you want to see if they're moving forward to poach, and then you can kind of mirror them. As they move forward, you need to back up to buy yourself time. But as soon as you see that they're out of the play, if they drop their racket, or you just see in your peripheral vision that the ball goes by them, then your eyes immediately go to that baseline player. And you want to look at their position as number one. So if they're way behind the baseline, then you can start moving early. One of the reasons you can move early is because if they do go down the line, they're so far behind the baseline, that ball travels a long way down the line, which means your partner has plenty of time to cover you.
True.
Another thing to look for is which side are they turning to. So if they have a weak backhand and you see them 3 feet, 5 feet behind the baseline, they're in the ad court, and they all of a sudden turn to that backhand side. Depending on the game score and the point score and the situation, I might go so early that they see me and they hit that down. I just say, hit the down the line backhand. I know you hate that shot. Good luck. But if I've done that a couple times, on the next time I see them line up for that backhand, I might go early and then come back and fake, or I might hold my ground for a second and then time it with their swing. So the more you can study the opponents rather than keeping your eyes on the ball before they hit, the more information you can get, and then the more poaching cues and information you can get to decide to move across. I think that's the big thing.
Gotcha. So one, philosophy that I hear often is that the stronger player should always play the ad side. So do you subscribe to this philosophy? And then, what are some factors maybe that lead you to maybe that you wouldn't necessarily, have that be the determining factor?
Yeah, this is something I've had a lot of debate with people over the years, on Instagram and Twitter, and even on some podcasts. I don't subscribe to that. It doesn't make sense to me. If you're playing with ad scoring, the deuce court returner is going to end up with more return points, because any 40-15 or 15-40 game, the deuce court returner ends up with 3 returns. The ad court returner ends up with 2. So
Right.
I want my stronger player hitting more returns. Now, that's only one factor, right? That doesn't mean I'm saying the stronger player should definitely play the deuce side, but it's an argument that the stronger player should play the deuce side. The argument that the stronger player should play the ad side that everybody says is all the pressure points are on the ad side. I don't really buy that. I think 30 all is very much a pressure point. I think deuce is very much a pressure point. And all the points are worth 1. So I think to buy into something like that, I would need to see data that the weaker player performs worse than expected under pressure, versus the stronger player who would perform as expected under pressure. And I haven't seen that data. I think pressure affects the weaker player and the stronger player the exact same. So if the weaker player has a 40% chance to win their return point and the stronger player has a 50% chance to win their return point under pressure, I think it's going to be about the same. Maybe they get 1 or 2 percentage points different, but in the same direction.
Yeah, I like that. Well, I remember a while ago when I was driving to play mixed doubles, a match. I think I ended up by chance seeing that you had an episode on mixed doubles. So I was wondering, what, you know, how does mixed doubles, potentially differ from like, regular gender doubles in terms of strategy, and just if there's any like unique strategies that you would kind of think about, for mixed doubles.
Yeah. I've asked a lot of the pro players who I've had on the podcast this question. I think you still approach it the same way you do any other doubles match. You have to look at each opponent's strengths and weaknesses. In general, the guys are going to be a little taller, so the girls are going to be a little bit easier to lob because they're typically a little shorter. Now, I've played mixed doubles matches where it's the opposite. Usually, the guys are going to have a little bit better overhead or bigger overhead, more difficult to kind of defend against. So that's a few reasons to lob the girl. I've heard even Renee Stubbs said this on, I think it was the US Open last year. I was watching a mixed doubles match. One of the players lobbed the guy and she just went nuts. And she was like, why would she lob the guy? You have to lob the girl in that situation. So that's kind of funny, but
That's funny.
That's one thing that you want to keep in mind. Generally, a lot of guys, especially at the club level and on the mixed doubles court, for whatever reason, I find a lot of guys maybe they're trying to impress the girls or something, but they try to hit the ball really hard. So you can generate a lot of errors from them on the baseline if you're active at the net. You can force them down the line. They're going to hit some down the line winners, but you'll be able to force even more errors. So it ultimately is worth it. A lot of people think the guy needs to serve first. I don't believe that because I've played a lot of mixed doubles matches at 9-0 when my partner holds serve more often than I do. And the reason for that is I'm a better net player. And my serve's not super strong anyways. That's one of the weakest parts of my game. Even if my serve is stronger than my partner's, we're still better off with her serving first because I'm a stronger net player. I'm very active at the net in mixed doubles, and it forces a lot of return errors. Whereas when I'm serving, if my partner's not very active at the net, maybe they're shorter and they don't have the same wingspan that I do, they can't cover as much of the net. The opponents find it easier to just hit their return off of my serve into the open court, or even lob the net player to force me to hit a serve +1 from the baseline. So that's kind of a myth that I feel like a lot of people subscribe to that I don't believe. So those are a couple of I think the most common kind of mixed doubles things to keep in mind.
Good stuff. Debunking a bunch of myths today on the show. I like it. So I have so many questions to ask here. In terms of big servers, so obviously that's something where, we come across a lot, especially if you're playing, like, let's say maybe a 5-0-4-0 pair, which I ended up playing in sectionals. I think my last match at least, and that was really tough. It's tough, lost in the super tiebreaker, but anyways, it's besides the point. How do you deal with big servers? Like, are there particular strategies that you think are really good to help neutralize when you're against these types of players?
Yeah. Are you talking about mixed for this 9-0 match?
Oh yeah, sorry, I brought up mixed as like kind of the the example, but I guess it
Yeah.
could be. I mean, it could be either, unless you think it's a kind of a different case scenario. But it could be
No.
either gender or mixed.
Yeah, I don't think it is. So the first thing I talked with Peter about this yesterday a little bit. The first thing we have to think about against a big server is kind of our mindset.
Mm,
What a lot of us think at the club level is that if we lost the point, we did something wrong. I'll see all the time when I'm on the court. One thing I like to do is have teams play sets, and I'll sit back in the corner in one of the corners and talk to the team that's on my side in between points, and I'll see them walk back after the point, and one of them will tell their partner, "Oh, that's my fault," and I'll stop them and say, "Wait, tell me what you did wrong. Like, what would you have done differently?" And a lot of times they can't tell me because they didn't do anything wrong. It's just tennis, and you're going to lose a lot of
yeah,
points. So if you're playing somebody with a big first serve, you need to be shooting for maybe try to win 35% of those points. Like, that would be a pretty good number. Um, so your odds are you're going to lose the point, especially in doubles since you have that net player. So the first priority is just find a way to get as many returns in play as possible, even if that net player is picking balls off, and then just wait for that game where they make one or two dumb mistakes at the net. They miss a few easy volleys because it happens at our level, and that's your opportunity to break. Or wait for that game where the big server misses all their first serves and you get a lot of second serve looks. So you have to really just kind of focus on the process and know that this player has a really big serve. We just got to find a way to defend as best as we can. You might even have to play two back on their first serve. You just have to do what you can to try to get as many points as possible and then wait for that game to break. And it might be the case that their opponent or their partner doesn't have as big of a serve, and you can focus on breaking their serve instead as well.
mm-hmm. So we go from big servers to active net players like yourself, Will. So how do we neutralize, players who are just like super active and you feel like they're always picking off your return and other rally shots?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, one of the first things that I like to study with net players is how far they play off of the net. So if they play really
Mm,
close to the net, I use the lob, especially on return. I use it a lot. It's a really
yeah.
effective tactic. And one thing that a lot of people don't think about when they're hitting the lob return is where they're hitting it from. So if you can step into the court and take that lob return as early as possible, it'll get over the net player's head faster. If you
Mm,
take that lob return from behind the baseline, the net player has a lot more time to react to that ball and move back for the overhead. So I like to step forward several feet inside the baseline, take that return early, and just chip the lob down the line over the net player. And I'll do it over and over again until they make an adjustment. I played a 5-0 match against two lefties which is pretty uncommon a couple of weeks ago. And I was returning in the ad court. So with the lefty, they have their backhand volleyed down the line in the ad court. And they were playing regular formation. This player played really close to the net, and I just kept hitting this lob down the line and got the server to hit a running backhand. And we won the majority of the points. And it wasn't until the third set tiebreaker where they finally made an adjustment and started using I formation against me. But by then, it was a little bit too late. So I think the lob is a great return tactic against really aggressive net players to neutralize them. Another thing to think about is, can you just hit a quality return cross court? And what do they do with the volley? A lot of club players, myself included, I mean, if they're hitting a quality return cross court and I'm poaching, I'm not always going to be able to put that volley away. I might even miss a few of those. So, keep returning cross court and don't change your strategy just because they're moving. Change your strategy because they're actually making the volley and ending the point on it and taking control. So, keep that in mind before you make too many adjustments. Going down the line obviously can work as well, but it's, again, a little bit lower percentage. So I would say the lob is probably the best tactic to start with.
Good stuff, Will. So I know that you have this really cool doubles return cheat sheet, which we will link in the show notes page. But I did want to ask you a couple of questions about the return. So I guess first off is, what do players get wrong the most on the return? Like, what mistakes are they making?
Yeah, at the 3-0 to 4-0 level, one of the biggest mistakes I see, or this isn't even a mistake, it's really an opportunity for people to get better, is not adjusting your return position based on the pace of the serve. So we get comfortable returning from, maybe it's a foot or two behind the baseline, maybe it's 5 feet behind the baseline, wherever your comfort zone is, and we stay there. And I see it all the time when I'm watching a 3-5 match. The opponent will have a really big first serve, they'll hit their first serve, they'll miss their first serve, and they have a really weak second serve, and the returner stays in the same exact position. And that weak second serve crosses the net, it lands short in the service box, it reaches its height, and then the returner is running forward and having to lift the ball up from their ankles or their knees. And they get into a defensive position when they just had a look at a very weak second serve. So adjust your return position forwards and backwards based on the pace of the opponent's serve. And that might be between first and second serve. It might be between the different opponents. Maybe one player has a big serve, one player has a weaker serve. It could also be a wind thing. I've had partners in the past really struggle to return because we're returning into the wind. And I told them, hey, the wind is really helping their serve out. I've had to take a few steps back. Why don't you try it and see if it works? And they're able to make the adjustment, and it works really well. So you want to take all of that into consideration and adjust your return position. I would say that's probably the biggest opportunity on returns. And then in the cheat sheet, which I know you'll link to, what I did is I tried to challenge myself to include the most important information about return strategy for doubles all in one page. And that's what I was able to do with that. So there's a few more tips in there for people who are interested.
Sweet. Awesome. And yeah, I will link to that for sure. And then in terms of the type of shot that we're hitting, I know obviously there's some scenarios where, the lob is ideal, but is there, what's the general, thought process on what type of shot should I be aiming for on the return?
So one of the things, or one of the kind of rules from the cheat sheet is if you can get the return back to the server, then that's a win. So if you can do that on a consistent basis, basically just avoid the net player, get the server to hit a serve +1 shot consistently, then that is a victory. So whatever you have to do to get it back to the server, do that. Whether it's a lob down the line, a drive cross court, a chip cross court, whatever it is, if you can just do that on a consistent basis, you're going to be a good returner. You're going to win a good percentage of points. So that's the main thing I would really focus on. I don't think there's kind of an ideal type of return. I think it really depends on your skill set, depends on the opponents you're playing, a bunch of different factors like that.
Got it. And then let's say you're at the baseline, your partner's at the net, and then you have, the two opposing players at the net, and you have, just a normal ground stroke that you, and then you're trying to process in your head, okay, what type of shot should I hit? Should I dip in the middle? Should I lob, etc.? So what's your thought process there in terms of what type of shot to hit against two net players from the baseline?
Sure. Yeah, let me go back to the whiteboard here. So let's say I'm hitting a forehand from the deuce court. Both net players are up. So the place I usually like to start is middle, and I'll try to get it a little bit left of center to the opposing deuce court player's backhand volley. The middle is the lowest part of the net. It's a very high percentage play because it's the middle of the court. I'm not going to miss it wide. And then typically players at the club level are going to have a weaker backhand volley than forehand volley. So if I can find their backhand volley, that's a place that I typically like to start. A couple other things to keep in mind is what do you know about these players? Is one of them a particularly weaker net player? So if I know that this player down the line in the ad court, when I'm hitting my forehand in the deuce court, is the weaker player, then I'll have communicated that with my partner and say, hey, if they both get to the net, let's go at that player's backhand volley because they're the weakest volleyer on the court and they hate their backhand volley. So in that case, I'm going to go down the line at their backhand volley. My partner knows I'm going there, so they're able to pinch a little bit towards the middle pretty early for any weak balls that come through the middle here as well. You want to also be studying the position of the net players. So if they're a serve and volley team, or if they are just really aggressive and like to get to the net, if I'm the net player, my partner's rallying from the baseline, let's say we've lost a few of these points where I'm stuck at the net, both opponents are at the net, my partner's hitting from the baseline, I might tell them, hey, it looks like they are, and this will be a conversation we have in between points, it looks like they're crashing the net really hard, especially player A or player B, whoever it is. Next time you get in that situation, why don't you try lobbing that player because they're so close to the net? So those are some of the best places to start, just middle backhand volley or down the line backhand volley if that's the weaker player. But I want you to also study each opponent, study their position, how hard they're closing, and work with your partner to create a better game plan for that situation. And when they do throw up that lob, this net player does need to start to shift backwards until they know that lob is clear and they don't have to defend against an overhead, and then they can start to move forward again.
Love it. Love it. Awesome stuff, Will. Appreciate that. So I know you're doing a lot of great stuff, obviously, and I'd mentioned, your podcast and you have a great website as well. So what is the best place or places for people to follow? You can also obviously shout out, social media platforms as well.
Sure. Yeah, the podcast has grown a lot over the years. It's where I interview pro doubles players, coaches, a lot of people who you've had on the Tennis Summit. Our Instagram channel has been doing well the last year, so we're up to almost 10,000 followers, and I try to produce new lessons on there every week, at least a couple, and they're very short, kind of 60-second, 90-second reels that people can consume, and I'm analyzing pro doubles points. The return cheat sheet we'll link to in the show notes. People can sign up for that, and when you do, you'll be signing up for the weekly Double Strategy newsletter, which goes out every Thursday, and that's totally free as well. And then, other than that, the website is thetennistribe.com. The podcast is on all the typical podcast platforms. I'll have some more kind of content coming up over the next several months.
Awesome. Awesome, Will. So I always close with this question, so I'll ask you, and I think you might have remembered from last time we interviewed you, but what is one key tip that you can give to us to help us improve our doubles game?
I don't know what my answer was last time. I'd be interested to, we should go back and check that out.
Look that up.
Because
Yeah.
this is one of the great things about studying doubles and working with players at every single level is I'm constantly learning and kind of focusing on a different area um, at any given point during the year. I would say right now, this would apply for singles or doubles. Challenge yourself to get outside of your comfort zone. I think, the question you asked earlier about, I feel like there's too many balls during a cross court rally that I'm not going after. Challenge yourself to move earlier than you think you should. And I mentioned earlier, practice matches are a great time to do this because it's low stakes and you don't have to win. I've been playing some practice sets recently with some 4-0 and 4-5 players, and I've got my 5-0 sectionals coming up next month, and I'm training for that. I'm losing sets against these lower level players because I'm working on specific things. And that doesn't mean I don't get frustrated, but I'm working on my lob return. I'm working on sharper angles on my volleys, which means I'm missing a lot of them. And I don't need to go for those angles against these players, but I will need them against the higher level 5-0 players. So I'm losing sets against these players because I'm expanding my comfort zone. I'm trying to really push myself. And I would encourage everybody listening, if you really want to improve, there's no way to improve if you're not uncomfortable. And you've got to kind of expand that comfort zone.
I love that. Thanks a lot, Will. Well, it was really a pleasure, speaking with you as usual. You're a wealth of knowledge, especially for doubles game. I really appreciate everything you're doing. Again, connecting with the pros and bringing us a lot of great content, with the doubles pros. So keep up the great work. And as I mentioned, everybody check out the doubles return cheat sheet that Will has very kindly, provided for us. So we'll have a link in the show notes page. And definitely everybody check out the Doubles Only Tennis podcast as well as the Tennis Tribe website. So, Will, thanks again for coming on. Really appreciate it. And just looking forward to the next one because I definitely have more doubles questions for you.
Awesome. Thanks a ton, Mirban.
Thank you, Will. Take care. All righty. I hope you really enjoyed that interview with Will Boucek. Will, thanks a lot for coming back to the show. Really enjoyed it. Enjoyed your insights on the doubles game and definitely going to take those lessons onto the court and reap the benefits. As we mentioned, definitely check out Will's doubles return cheat sheet, and the link is in the show notes. The URL is thetennistribe.com/return-cheat sheet. But again, much easier to just go to the show notes page, which is usually the description, at the bottom where it has the links in your podcast apps. Or, if you go to my website at tennisfiles.com/podcast, you can find it there. Also, would really love it if you leave a review when you get a chance for the show. You can do that on Apple Podcasts at tennisfiles.com/Apple Podcasts with an S at the end, or on any app of choice that you use to listen to the show. We just find that Apple Podcasts is the biggest mover of the show in terms of visibility and rankings and so forth. So it's mainly the visibility for me, just, help the show reach more peeps, tennis players just like you trying to improve their game. So yeah, with that, thanks so much for listening to the show. I do want to get you a quote as I do at the end of a lot of shows. This one is by Duke Ellington, and Duke said, "A problem is a chance for you to do your best." Really love that mindset and approach. That is the way to do it. All right. Well, thanks so much for listening to this episode of the podcast, and looking forward to bringing you more content to help you improve your game. Until next time, this is Mirban Aranshad, your host, signing out.